What's up, everyone? I'm Ashley Smashley, and in this video, we're going to talk about having empathy for the suffering of a mass collective. If you are new here, smash that like button, subscribe, and leave me a comment below. On this channel, we talk all things spiritual awakening, the light and the dark, so we can become aware and integrate because that's necessary to become the version of you that can live out your infinite potential. We are going to be talking about having empathy for the suffering of a mass collective, and more specifically in regards to war. And I'm going to slap a huge trigger warning on this video. If you are someone who is triggered and points blame and think that other people trigger you and that other people are wrong and bad, you might as well just click away from this video. So if this is a sensitive topic for you, just click away from this video now. This is not going to be the video for you. But if you are someone who is genuinely interested in learning about this concept of having empathy for the mass for the suffering of a mass collective in war, or if you are someone who does get triggered but understands that your 3D world is a mirror reflecting back to you energy that you have repressed within your field that needs to get integrated and alchemized, and you want to use your triggers as such, go ahead and keep watching. This video topic was inspired by this meme that I saw, and I'll post it here. And seeing that meme got my wheels turning, because especially the last statement on that meme where it says that it's spiritual bypassing and it doesn't make you more evolved than anybody. And like, that makes no sense to me, first of all, because if you have transcended body consciousness and suffering, and you no longer feed the illusions and the paradigms of the old earth, and you understand that everyone is here on their own ascension journey and that they chose all of their experiences for what's best for them along their evolutionary journey, you do have a more expanded, more evolved state of consciousness than someone who is stuck in suffering. Suffering is a choice. No matter what you are going through, you have the choice to take an expanded state of consciousness and understand that it is all for the greater good along our evolutionary process, because this is just a story. None of this is real. So to say, oh, but there are real people that are suffering, that's not even true, first of all, because we're not real. We're characters in a story. But I understand there are people out there that are in a state of consciousness in which they perceive that they are a real person who is suffering at the hands of war. And you can have empathy for that. Wow, that's must be an awful experience, but not dwell in the state of suffering amongst yourselves. And this is specifically from like the mass collective, right? I'm not talking about when you're one-on-one with somebody or in a small intimate setting and you're offering empathy to somebody and you're actually helping them raise the frequency. Because if we look at this from an energetic standpoint, sitting in suffering and having empathy for others that are suffering in a mass collective of war is doing nothing to benefit the situation. If you are an activist that's actually out there doing something to make a difference, that's a different story. But if you are just sitting on the other side of the world having empathy for suffering of people in a mass collective, you are feeding that pendulum with your energy, attention, and emotion. And not only are you feeding that pendulum, that's your point of attraction. You're suffering, and that's your frequency that you're radiating, and that's going to attract more suffering into your own life. So I want you to honestly assess How is me sitting in suffering for the mass collective of war benefiting anybody? It's not. It's making it worse, actually, because you're feeding the pendulum. And if you don't know what a pendulum is, I'm going to insert this clip from Doughty where he goes into pendulums and he talks about how your energy and attention, even if you're against it, is feeding it and strengthening it.
Oh my goodness, look how bad the world is. Those are pendulums, those are thought structures, and you may say, oh, I feel angry about it, but many times it may be also the anger of thousands of other people or hundreds of thousands of people that are thinking the same way. So, this is the thing with the pendulum. A pendulum is a thought structure that many people are also thinking. Then what happens is that energy kind of gets pushed back and it goes the other direction. So it's almost like you can't ever fight a pendulum because by fighting it, you actually strengthen it. And if you get sucked into them and you start to react to them, then you start to become a part of it and you start to feel the emotions of that. So this is about being aware of what you are consuming, being aware of what you are listening to, and then deciding to consciously observe it and then to also let it go at the same time. This is where we really start to become powerful. But there's a part of this that has to do with observing those pendulums, those thoughts that come into your head when you're watching the news that say, oh, look at this that's happening. Observe those thoughts. Don't react to them, just observe them. So these pendulums are just thought structures. They're these thoughts that are trying to hook you in to get you to feed them with thought, energy, and emotion. And the key to transcending pendulums is to simply observe them, to be aware of them, to see them for what they are, and then to allow them to be there, and then to choose what you want despite the pendulum having its type of pull. So this is about being aware of what you are currently setting the intention for. And one intention you can set right now is to simply become aware of the pendulums. Become aware of these thought structures. The next time you feel triggered about some political party or something the president is doing, observe it from a neutral place. Allow it to be there. Because as you allow it to be there, it will naturally start to go away. Anytime you fight a pendulum, you feed it. Remember that.
We are at a 3D, 5D timeline split. Okay. So people who are sitting in suffering or sitting in human consciousness and focusing their attention on everything that is bad and wrong, you are feeding the old earth timelines. To usher in new earth, you have to actively choose the 5D timeline with the expanded state of consciousness and understand that everything is working out for the greater good of humanity. This is not disconnecting from humanity. This is transitioning into new earth where we get to actively choose a better timeline that doesn't feed the old earth paradigms and feed energy to the war pigs. I want you to honestly think, like, do you think that the war pigs are out there scrolling on Facebook and said, well, Joe Schmo from Buffalo over there in the United States, he doesn't like what we're doing. We should probably stop. No. How is this benefiting the mass collective? There is no benefit to fixating your suffering and empathy on the old earth timelines. We have to transcend this human consciousness, body consciousness, this illusion of suffering and victimhood. All right. And I want you to think about this. Okay. Yes, we know that we create our lives. In the spirit realm, we plan out our lives and we come into our bodies and then we forget that, right? We choose our suffering experiences. So the people that are suffering in war, they likely chose those experiences because they have to integrate their karma from another life when they were involved in the violence of war or they were a war pig. And so to integrate that karma, they have to experience from the victim perspective. And that's how it's helping them along their evolutionary journey. All right, it doesn't benefit anyone to feed the illusion and to feed these old earth timelines. So If this is triggering you, or if you just can't get out of suffering for others, first of all, that's a sign of a lack of an energetic boundary. You should not be taking on the emotions of others unless you're alchemizing them and integrating them. But taking on the suffering of others and looking at it from the perspective of that is what is going on is wrong. This is bad. This is wrong. That is the illusion. That is a lower state of consciousness. And yes, that is a less evolved perspective. So, whatever that lady was talking about in that meme, it's like, it doesn't make sense. When you have a more evolved consciousness, you will understand this perspective. And I pray that everybody has the experience, the actual visceral experience of this, so that they're not stuck in other people's suffering. They're not stuck in their own suffering either. That they understand what's actually going on here. Because someday you will get to that point and you'll be like, oh God, all that suffering, I wish I would have known this back then. Right? That's what I look at, like throughout my 20s. I was always suffering. Right? And I look back at that now and think, what a blessing that was. So once you evolve your consciousness, you will have a better understanding of this like from within, right? Not just from listening to somebody talk about it. But I want you to honestly assess what your hyperfixation on empathy of suffering of a mass collective is doing for your ego. Because I realized this, I used to get super wrapped up in these pendulums as well. And I realized one of the first times that I was like super fixated on the injustices of the world, I was like 19, and it was the first time I got addicted to drugs, and it was a distraction tool. I was using all of that other stuff going on out there as a distraction from facing myself and what I was actually doing. So you could be using it as a distraction tool. And also, it's a way for your ego to validate yourself in the 3D, external validation, and place yourself on a pedestal. Oh, this makes me better than you because I have empathy for suffering. This makes me better than you because I care about this and you don't. This makes me better than them because they're out there killing people and I'm sitting here on my high horse suffering for them. That's what's really going on. Your ego is using that as a form of external validation. Because we are all one, and this is all just a story. All right. So it doesn't make you better than anybody else because you care or you have empathy for people suffering. You're making it worse in the energetic standpoint of the timelines and paradigms that's going on this earth. You are feeding your energy to suffering and feeding your energy to that pendulum, strengthening that pendulum, which is exactly what they want. They want you feeding their timelines of old earth, not sitting in the new earth timelines in an expanded state of consciousness. It's okay to admit that other people have more evolved consciousnesses than you. It doesn't make anybody better than anybody. Nobody in an expanded state of consciousness is actually sitting there thinking, well, I have a higher state of consciousness than you, so that makes me better than you. No. It's like grades of a school, right? People who are in 11th and 12th grade don't look at kindergartners and think, I'm better than you. No, it's about just the age of your soul and the wisdom and where you're at on your ascension journey. So understanding that people who don't take on the suffering of a mass collective and choose to focus their energy on ushering in a new earth timeline, they do have a more evolved consciousness than people that want to focus their energy on suffering and stay in those old earth paradigms. The systems are going to collapse. And all of this is, we're transitioning into new earth, whether or not you choose to have empathy for the suffering and sit there and suffer for them, or you choose the new Earth timeline. You're benefiting Earth by choosing the new Earth timeline. So I reached out to someone that I highly respect. They're more evolved consciousness than mine. I'm okay to admit that. This person has a much more evolved consciousness than me. I emailed them and they actually emailed me back like almost not immediately, but the same day, I think. And I'll insert the email here. It doesn't help to sit in suffering and focus your attention there. You're feeding the old Earth paradigm. You're feeding the old Earth timelines. You're feeding their war pig pendulum. You're not doing anything to benefit the people who are actually suffering in war. And by taking that experience away from them, you would be messing with their karma that they planned out for themselves so that they can go along their ascension journey. And if you're not familiar, Viktor Frankl wrote a book about being in the war, the Holocaust or World War II. And he noticed that there were people in there that were using that experience to strengthen their spirituality, and they were not suffering, and others were. And I'll insert the AI little description of that here. But if people that are sitting in the war can take an expanded view of consciousness on it, there's no reason why someone who has absolutely nothing to do with it is sitting there and suffering. If that's you, I please invite you to ask yourself, how is this benefiting me? How is this benefiting the collective? It's benefiting your ego, that's for sure, because you are using it as a distraction tool and to validate yourself in the 3D, to externally validate yourself. And we all do that, okay? We all have our ways that we externally validate ourselves in the 3D, whether that be thinking that waking up early makes you a better version of you. Oh, I woke up early today, so I'm so much better. That makes me better. Makes me better. Need my validation. Or, oh, I have empathy and compassion for the suffering of others in a mass collective, and that makes me better than you, right? Or, one of the social injustices I used to get caught up in is the profit over people, right? You think you're better than them because you care more about people than profits. It's ego. It's ego validation. We're all one. This is a story. Everyone and every single thing has a place in this story. And when you expand your consciousness, you actually have the visceral, tangible experience of that. You will understand that from within, and you will no longer sit in suffering for others. Again, it is different if you are one-on-one or in a small group setting, and where your empathy and compassion is actually helping somebody in that moment, but you're not helping anybody by doing that in the mass collective. It's feeding the pendulum of war. So I know this is a very sensitive topic, but we have to expand our consciousness and usher in the new 5D timelines where this doesn't exist. All right, you can't do that by giving it your energy and attention. We can live on an earth where this doesn't exist, but we have to usher that in with our expanded consciousness and choose the 5D timelines. And honestly assess how you having empathy for suffering of a mass collective is making a difference without action. Spreading awareness, we're all aware of a war, right? Like, we already all know that that's going on, right? There's so much more at play going on with that situation than any of us can do anything about by focusing our energy and attention on it only, right? So please take all of that into consideration. If you have suffering, if you have empathy for the suffering of a mass collective and it's affecting your everyday life, like that's something that you're focusing your energy and attention on regularly, you're likely using it as a distraction tool or to validate your ego, because it's only feeding it and making it worse. And to usher in the new 5D timelines, we have to actively choose the expanded state of consciousness. If you like this video, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. I'll see you in my next video.